Hey, y'all, welcome to the Outsmart Overeating Podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Hooper, and alongside me is co-coach Steph Miramontes. Today, I want to talk to you about overcoming an urge to eat, emotionally eat, by using emotional processing tool that we utilize in the Unstuffed program. Now, Steph, you were on our coaching call last night, and many of our clients are struggling with this idea of not being physically hungry, but still having a desire to eat. This is how we know it is mind hunger, not physical hunger, and a lot of times just a habit that they have created of snacking or eating outside of physical hunger, right? So today, I thought we'd take a little bit of time and share with our listeners the SLIP protocol that you created a while back and how we educate and teach our clients to process their emotions in a healthy way without food.
So the SLIP protocol is something that was created out of a need for a way to process emotions about your body through body image. And it has proven to be an effective protocol in so many other areas because something that we learned before we learned the SLIP protocol is that emotions are stored in the body. These are things that are physical sensations that we experience. And I think most people, at least I'll speak for myself, thought about emotions as something that was happening to me. I thought they were very cognitive. I had a cognitive view of emotional experiences. Like I'm feeling this way, but it's all in my head, you know? And so I think so many of us are disconnected from the physical sensations in our bodies as it relates to what's going on around us. We are blaming the world around us. This is hard. This person did this, all of the things, and not here's my part in this, which is I'm owning the physical sensation that my body is going through because something needs addressing, something needs my attention. And as it relates to food, chances are there's some habit there. This habit was developed, this overeating habit, maybe it's nighttime overeating, maybe it's afternoon snacking or something like that. This habit was developed because of an emotional experience that you have or used to have, and it no longer possibly applies, but you still have that itch that needs to be scratched. The brain still sends up that signal of, hey, there's some discomfort here. Hope you'll do something about it. The way we've traditionally done something about it is eat. And so it feels very demanding and urgent when in reality it's just a physical sensation. So that's what this protocol is really designed to address, is recognizing that physical sensation and processing through it.
Yeah, if there's anything that we have learned over the years with having worked with over 2,500 women on their emotional, compulsive, and binge eating, it's that it isn't about the food. It's about your feelings and the way you feel now and the way you want to feel, or maybe even not want to feel, right? It's maybe a distraction from feeling something. And I think the goal is to feel more in control, more proud, more confident that anybody can conquer emotional overeating. But I think in order to do that, you do have to develop an awareness in ways that maybe you haven't before. And that's kind of where our newest clients are at, is they're developing that awareness and starting to recognize those habitual patterns. But as I often explain it to clients, is it's like getting into a car and we're very used to just immediately putting on our seatbelt. That desire is just so impulsive, instinctive. We don't even think about it. It's totally natural. And they have eating habits right now that are on similar automation, that the clock strikes a certain time, or they hit the chair, or they turn on the TV, or whatever the case may be. And the knee-jerk reaction is to pull out the food. And so those habits have become married over time. And it's our objective to help them pull those habits apart, look at them individually, and create new habits, more goal-supporting habits.
I love the car analogy because so Neffy, my husband, has this ridiculous car. I mean, it's a nice car, whatever. It's a Toyota, but when you don't put on your seatbelt, like we're just going down the driveway, for example, it doesn't just ding. This bitch screams at you like you have murdered it. It is relentless. And I'm like, holy shit, all I'm doing is taking off my seatbelt to get into the back seat for my purse. Like, calm down. And I think that is very reminiscent of what our clients experience when they don't go for the food, when the brain automatically says, hey, go get the food. And they're like, no, we're not doing that anymore. Then it just screams at you and grates on your last damn nerve. And so I understand why this feels like a painful and difficult thing to go through, because I want to murder that seatbelt dinger or whatever it's called. And I imagine that it's very similar.
Yeah, it's just your brain being like, hey, it's that time where we do that thing. Like, why are we not doing that thing? We always do that thing. It's just a suggestion. It is your reminder, and it's not something that you have to act on. But initially, it's very difficult, and there is a bit of willpower that is needed up front. But recognizing that this is just a habit, something that you have literally trained your brain to do, means that it's something that you can unlearn. And like I said, replace it with something that feels more in alignment with your goals and your values. Maybe no longer ignoring our feelings, but becoming curious about them and trying to understand why we created the habit in the first place. Or maybe, like you said, it is just an outdated habit, but there is an emotional experience attached to it, needless to say. Hence why we want to talk about the SLIP protocol and the emotional processing steps. Steph, I know this was born from your Body Image Unfiltered program, but it has been a very valuable tool in the Unstuffed program and helping our clients break the cycle of overeating. And do you mind to just break it down a little bit? Explain to us what SLIP is an acronym for.
So the SLIP protocol is 4 steps. And the S is for surrender. And this is step 1, because if you think about anything that has gone on in your life, fighting reality, resisting is the most painful part when it comes to these emotional experiences. The more we think something shouldn't be the way that it is, the more pain and suffering we experience. And that's very human. It's very normal. But as we can bring our logical thinking on board, and we're not so in that automated brain that feels like this is a tragedy happening, if we can start looking at this as this is normal. It is normal for me to feel this way. Whatever I'm going through right now, I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to say it shouldn't be there. Of course it should be there. It's so well practiced that I soothe myself with food, or I give into these urges and what you might call a craving, not you, Leslie, but our listeners might call a craving or something. It's normal for me to feel like this is difficult. So we're just going to surrender to allowing that feeling to show up, to come, not judge it, not make it wrong, and not have to make it go away. This calms the brain down. This calms the nervous system down and helps you start to identify where it's coming from and how to process it. So that's step 1. Do you want to add anything to that, or should I just continue?
No, I actually think that that one step is really valuable, because we, again, just that knee-jerk reaction, have a feeling, find ourselves in the pantry. And I think just by slowing things down and recognizing that we don't actually have to do anything. And that can be an empowering place to get to, but it is going to take some time. So I just want our listeners to manage their expectations appropriately, because just because we know something doesn't mean that we are able to execute or do it quite yet. And so why don't you go ahead with step number 2?
Yeah. So that first surrender just allows you to feel safe to feel. You send the message to your psyche, it is safe for me to feel. I am not going to make this go away right now. The next is to locate it. That's the L, SL, right? So L is for locate. Where is this in my body? Again, emotions are a physical sensation. Everybody understands exactly what you mean when you say it was like a punch in the gut, you know, or I closed up, my throat closed up, or, my heart just was crushed, whatever. So
Butterflies in the stomach.
butterflies in the stomach. We understand what it means when we describe these things. And yet many of us haven't made the connection to all these other nuanced emotions being physical sensations in our body. So I just invite you, once you have decided a non-judgment stance of surrender, to do a little bit of a body scan, head to toe. Where are you actually feeling this feeling? Notice, we don't have to know what the feeling is yet. We don't have to have any solutions. We don't have to be solving this. We just want to know, where is it located in the body? And this does a couple of things that I think are really powerful. One is that it does make that connection that this is a physical sensation, not a panic in your brain. It just takes you out of your head. And getting out of your head is already you're 50% of the way there. If you can get out of your head and out of the rumination and just get into your body where you are starting to be curious and aware, it distracts you a little bit from the intensity of the urge, because you're giving your brain something else to do. Like, let's find it, some curiosity. And then it gives you a sense of control. As soon as you do find it, that allows you to recognize, okay, well, part of the processing piece is learning how to control that physical sensation. And we'll get there as we talk about this, but I just think the locating piece is so helpful in taking the temperature down. What do you think?
Well, the other thing that I like about it is how you've described it in the past is, does it have a feeling? A color, like a shape? Does it expand? Like, really trying to get clarity around what this feels like, what it looks like, even maybe if you can visualize it. Again, it does get you out of the head. And so true. 50% of the way, if you can get out of your head and into your body, because that's where all the chaos is. Just like a pinball ricocheting around in there, until we are able to slow it down again and recognize that this is something that we can control. And one thing I'm just going to throw out there, because I know it's been a really valuable tool for many of our clients, is recognizing that when it comes to feelings, they're really only at their maximum intensity. They're most potent for about 90 seconds. So if you can kind of go through this process in 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever, that's really all it takes in these early stages, I would say. So I don't want anybody to get into their own way by thinking, oh, this sounds like such a time-consuming thing, or who has the ability to do that when we're at work and we're in the middle of a meeting or on the subway, whatever, right? And so I just wanted to kind of plant that seed as we continue moving through these steps. Third one.
Yeah, to expand on the 90-second thing, if you think about getting scared, my kids, when they were young, used to scare me. They thought it was the funniest thing ever. It was a death wish for them. I don't know why they thought it was funny.
It is hilarious.
It is not hilarious. It is the worst. I hate to be scared.
Yeah, but it's hilarious to watch other people be scared.
And they loved it. But that's what we mean by it's 90 seconds. That's the nervous system reaction. The emotion takes about 90 seconds to vibrate through the nervous system. And then you realize it's just your bratty ass kid and not a big scary monster trying to murder you. And you're just like, oh, okay. Now my logical brain comes back in and I can control this. The reason so many of you want to now scream at me and throw your phone and be like, I'm going to send those bitches an email and be like, emotions aren't 90 seconds. Like, I hear you. Your nervous system is activated for various reasons, but it's because you continue to retell the story. And sometimes you do have to continue to retell the story because that's your brain's way of trying to make meaning and try to create understanding and things. So I understand that. I get it. But when it's these old, itchy, stupid habits that we're just trying to break, but they feel really urgent, but there's nothing deep and sinister underneath there, 90 seconds. And then you realize you're not running from a bear. Okay, that's it. So now we get to the part where most people try to start, and that is identifying the emotion. Get specific about what you're feeling. Instead of these blanket emotions like I'm mad or I'm stressed or something like that, start to dig a little bit deeper. Why are you mad? Do you feel like something was unjust, unfair? Are you embarrassed? Are you frustrated? Do you feel unappreciated? Were you betrayed? Like, what is the actual emotion beneath the mad that you're experiencing? If it's boredom, do you feel, because boredom is just a hilarious emotion to me, because you just go do something, but we don't, because there's something else underneath that boredom that says, I feel victimized by I don't have time, or I feel like I have all these other obligations that I don't want to have to attend to, or, there's always a story underneath the boredoms. Like, I live somewhere where I can't have any fun, or I don't want to upset the people in my life because that would be viewed as selfish if I went and did something I wanted to do. So get to the bottom of some of these emotions and identify, what is that? What am I actually hungry for? Because it's not food. I've already established that I ate dinner 30 minutes ago. It's not food. What am I hungry for? And the feelings wheel, as you mentioned earlier, Leslie, is one of the ways that we identify and name that feeling. It's this. And then we can kind of figure out, like, what is causing this?
Yeah, and I think it's important to be able to get clarity on the specific feelings so you're solving for the right problem, because the way that I'm going to solve for boredom is going to be very different than how I might be solving for shame, guilt, rejection, right? And so understanding the emotional language immediately makes the solution a little bit more clear. But I will tell you, this is a practice in and of itself, which is why I do encourage my clients to save it to their phone, the feelings wheel, or print it off and keep it in their pocket or in their purse or whatever, so they can check in with themselves throughout the day. And then you get to recognize that there is a whole rainbow of emotions that you experience in a day. It's not just stress, overwhelm, sad, and mad, which is basically the only handful of words, these umbrella feeling wheel words. It's so much deeper than that. And recognizing their patterns is also incredibly valuable. And that's how the feelings wheel can help support you in that process. So name that emotion as accurately as possible. Look at that feelings wheel and try to keep it to just one or two emotions, maybe. So we're not attaching all the emotions to how we're feeling in that moment or to that particular circumstance.
Yeah, I agree with that. Try to narrow your focus, even if you feel like one that we hear a lot is overwhelm in our programs. I'm just so overwhelmed. And I'm like, that is just a scattered way of thinking, and it's a habit. It's prioritizing all the different emotional experiences you're having as equally important, and they're not equally important. One of them is louder than the others. So if you can kind of stop the bleeding where it's most urgent, the other things are going to start to feel less problematic and easier to manage. But we've got to prioritize where the things are the loudest, where they're the most difficult to experience. If you can. Some people need to do it the opposite because it doesn't feel safe enough, or they don't feel equipped enough to handle the big thing that's going on. But that's really not what we're talking about here. That's an episode for another day. And then lastly, the P is for process. We are going to find a way to process this emotion. A lot of the ways that we have clients do this is through box breathing: in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold out for 4, all through the nose if you can, because that helps lower your nervous system response and takes you out of fight or flight and into this more calm, sympathetic state. And then 4, 7, 8 breathing is also an option, where you are breathing in for 4, holding for 7, and breathing out for 8. And in fact, any breathing out that is longer than you're breathing in helps lower the nervous system response. So that's really helpful. And it also, the counting, again, gets you out of your story and distracts your brain. So it divides your attention a little bit, which lowers the intensity of this emotional experience. If you don't have access to your breath, because sometimes some of us are really anxious people, we don't have access to our breath at that time, then we can do other things. Maybe it's going outside for a walk for a little bit. And I don't necessarily mean you have to find 30 minutes to go walking to process this urge. You literally can just change the channel in your brain by going outside and looking at something else. Like, look at some birds out the window. You just need to help neutralize these thoughts a little bit in your brain, so you do have access to this experience to process it and shake it out. And sometimes if you are in the middle of a meeting, you might tell yourself, hey, I'm recognizing I've got to surrender, I've got to locate, I've got to identify, I'm going to process this a little bit later. Because, using the meeting analogy, maybe you're at work and you're starting to feel a little amped up. You're noticing you're feeling a little snacky and agitated. You get through this process, and what you identify is not that you are stressed at work, but that you feel undervalued, or that you feel your boss or your business partner or your team has made you feel stupid. You feel unappreciated. You feel, like your work is going unacknowledged, something like that. Then you might go, oh, okay, that's actually the problem. It's not because my work is stressful. It is because I have feelings about everyone else's, the way that they're responding to me. And that's what I need to work through. I can't process that immediately, but I can work on that process over time. Food will not solve it though. Cookies aren't going to make people appreciate me more. They're just not. So let me figure out what I need in that moment. So, some movement, some play, music, talking to a friend. There are lots of different ways to process emotions. But of course, I like you to put your pen to paper and see what comes up in your psyche as you just write. Like, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm feeling. Here's what's coming up for me, if you can. Now, even on coaching calls, I'm a human. I have human emotions. I have a whole life outside of work and things like that. Sometimes if I'm going through something, my clients may notice I put both hands on my heart. It calms my nervous system. I might have to tell myself, like, hey, we're okay for a little bit. Like, you can hang in here for a little bit. Every human has to have their coping mechanisms. And as you get really good at going through this process, you'll find some that work fast for you. You'll find some that ground you really, really quickly. And it may be the box breathing, or it may be just, like I said, putting both hands on my heart and saying, okay, we're all right. Like, we're okay. This is good. We're fine for now. And that puts a pin in it until I can handle whatever I need to handle later. So there's a lot of ways to use this. It is a beginner's tool that becomes a deep and advanced tool with practice and time, but it's a lifesaver. I use it all the time for myself and clients.
And I think, going back to my previous point about emotional eating just being a habit, this SLIP protocol can also just become the habit that replaces the emotional eating. But it is going to require the two things that every habit require in order to allow it to become a habit. And that is ultimately repetition and consistency, doing it long enough and consistently enough for it to become your baseline, your subconscious reaction when you are feeling something. And the more you practice it, the more efficient you become at it. So it can just take a very short period of time. One thing I would offer up as an emotional processing tool for our clients is the self-coaching worksheet as well, because that also gives you an opportunity to process, work through the instance of emotional eating that we're asking you to ultimately document, and kind of practice those self-compassionate thoughts as well. So, Steph, is there anything else that you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, I promised that in the processing piece, I would talk to you a little bit more about controlling the emotion. And you alluded to some of it earlier when you talked about, does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it have a texture? How do I see this? And as you pay attention to where it is in your body through this processing, you can see, like, is it constricted? If I breathe into it, can I soften it a little bit? Can I soften the edges? Can I actually constrict it more? Can I make it tighter? Can I move it around a little bit? And I know that sounds a little bit hokey. I'm good with y'all judging me. I don't even care. Try it, because what it does is it puts you in an empowered instead of disempowered position to say, I actually am in control of my emotions. I may not be able to control every emotion every time fully. And the point isn't to do that anyway. We're supposed to feel. Emotions are guideposts. They teach us what we value. They teach us what's important to us. Even if what we are being emotionally guided toward is out of alignment, you're like, but I don't want to value that thing. Good to know. Now you know where your work is, right? But these emotions, we're not supposed to shut them down. We're supposed to feel safe to feel them, get curious about them and what the lesson is, what they're trying to teach us, and then release them. And so when we take that, we get in the driver's seat and we say, like, let's see if I can find it. Let me see if I can manipulate it, control it, move it, change it, adjust it, soften it, harden it, whatever. That's a good thing. Now you are in control of those feelings, of those vibrations that are going through your body.
And you get to sound like a total wizard when you're doing it. You get to feel like a wizard, maybe. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the reality is we are humans, and the human emotional experiences are quite normal. It's not something that we need to fear. And the reason why it can be so foreign and uncomfortable is because we don't have a relationship with that part of ourselves yet. But through this work, you can certainly develop that language. And it's really cool when you get there because you recognize how much power you actually do have over your emotional experience and the ability to change the channel in your brain if something is, or like just get to the bottom of it faster, right? Instead of allowing things to maybe linger or not really understanding why we feel the way that we feel. I mean, it really is like developing a new language. And it's not something that anybody is teaching us to do in a classroom or our parents sit down and educate us. It's really something that you have to go to a place like this to find. It's not common knowledge by any means. So props to all of you who tuned in today. Hopefully you can put this into practice, see how it goes, at least slow down the process of emotional eating, get curious, get compassionate without coddling yourself, as we talked to our clients about last night. It's not about letting ourselves off the hook. It's about ultimately having that compassionate accountability. Like, this matters to you. This is why we are dedicated and committed to figuring it out. That's very different than just like being a jerk to yourself, or, like I said, ultimately coddling yourself and telling yourself it's okay when you know deep down it's not okay. So, Steph, any final thoughts?
I feel like we should do a Compassion 101 episode in the near future because, man, that topic, no matter how many times I talk about it, no matter how many times I teach compassion in a way that's useful, people still think it's coddling until they get it. So once you get it, you get it. But it can be a bit of a process to get there. But no, I think, these 4 steps can cure your emotional overeating habit if you consistently put them into practice every single time. And they don't have to take a long time. It took us a long time to describe them to you, but they don't, but they don't have to take a long time. Even when I suggest journaling and writing things down, 2 minutes. Don't think you have to write a soliloquy, a life story. You don't have to dig into all your childhood wounds. We can do that. Like that can be part of this process. But in the moment, just scribble, chicken scratch, get it out on paper. I'm feeling this way. I'm hungry because I am actually hungry for approval or attention or a part of my life that I've been missing lately. Or, we see a lot of that with our new moms. Like, I don't know who I am as a person anymore because now I've just taken on this other role. There's so much in there. It doesn't have to go that deep. The understanding helps with the cure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I believe that is it for us today. Hopefully you all found this week's episode helpful in learning how to process your emotions to prevent an instance of emotional compulsive or binge eating. But again, please be patient with yourself. It takes a long time to create a habit and a lot of consistency, but trust me, it is work worth doing. You might as well understand the emotional language that your body is communicating anyway. Get curious, get compassionate, and we will catch you on the next one. Y'all have a great week.